Okay, we are live today, and I am just so thrilled to be with a star on my show today. This is, she looks Elizabeth Clamon,
Oh,
and she
there's
is
a
a,
star behind me. There's a star behind me.
yeah, I see it, you're glistening. But Elizabeth is a best-selling international author. She's got a whole bunch of books that she's written and collaborated with other people, based a lot of them on her story and the story of other people. It is just incredible. I was so inspired when I heard her story the other day, and we're going to actually be a part of a seminar here in a couple of weeks, a couple different ones we're going to be doing in April. So it's exciting, and I'm so grateful to have you with us today, Elizabeth. And I know we've got people that are going to be tuning in, but we're going to do this in two parts because your story is so long and so immense. So I was hoping you would get us started with the first part and tell us about how did you come to do what you're doing. My show is Speak to Me God, I'm listening, and I just want to know, we're created for a purpose. Tell me, how did you get to doing what you're doing today?
Well, I've had several iterations of my purpose over the years. I think when we lived as long as we have, we have different purposes for different seasons of our life. And I had three children really young, married really young, had three children really young, and really felt God calling me to homeschool them when my two girls were going into third and fifth grade, and our son was three. And so I homeschooled them all the way through high school. So I was thinking about it the last night, and I was thinking, I homeschooled for about 20 years. That was a long time of
No
homeschooling.
kidding.
And that was my calling and my purpose for that season in my life. I've always had businesses. I started my first business when I was 13. I wasn't even able to, I've always had that entrepreneurial gene. Sometimes I think it's a gene, sometimes I think it's a bit that God gives us, but I wasn't even old enough to have to fill out the paperwork. I had to fill it out in my mom's name so that I could go and just sell. And I just sold Avon like at a 13-year-old and to all of my friends' moms and everything and everybody in the neighborhood. And I just always had that entrepreneurial spirit. So, and my husband is military. He's been military for 32 years now, Air Force, and he's retiring in December. Yay! We're so
Oh, wow.
excited
That'll
to
be great.
start our new season in life. But
Yeah.
I in 2002 I attended a Women of Faith conference with one of my really dear friends, and well, actually with our entire church group. But I was there with a really good friend of mine, and our entire women's group at our church went, and I heard God tell me, I want you to do that. I want you to speak and empower women to stand up and to proclaim who I am and who they are in me and who I've made them to be. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm crazy. I'm hearing things. You know how that, first
Yeah.
time you hear, that's why God comes back to us like three, four, 10 times. I was
Right.
like, okay, all right, right. I'm just dreaming, I'm just thinking, well, I'm just thinking weird things. And I didn't think too much else about it until that next Sunday at church. The youth pastor's wife came up to me, and my kids weren't old enough to be youth, so I knew who she was, but I didn't really know her. And she came up and she said, at that Women of Faith conference, I thought about you. I thought you'd be great at that with all your experience homeschooling and moving with the military. And my jaw hit the floor.
Wow.
I was like, there is no way. We weren't even sitting anywhere near each other. There's no way she could
Wow.
have heard what I heard. So that was God confirming to me that that's what He was calling me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then about a week or so later, I was doing my devotional, and my devotional was on Isaiah 61, 1 through 3. I have called you to preach the good tidings and to heal the brokenhearted. And I was like, wow. And when God speaks to me in scripture, those words just jump off the page at me. It's
Right.
almost like they become 3D. And I was like, wow, okay, that's 3 times. I think I need to pay attention to this. I think I'm supposed to do. But I still had quite a bit of homeschooling left to do, and I knew I had a lot of healing to do. I knew that I was a very broken vessel that needed healing before I could help anybody else. Because it's kind of like when you're in so many pieces, it's hard to help somebody else pick up
Yeah,
their pieces when your pieces are everywhere.
right,
It just becomes a big jumbled mess of everybody's pieces.
right.
So that's when I started really having a lot of dreams and visions and realized that I was going to have to confront my family about the abuse that I suffered as a child, and that I was really going to have to stand up for myself and stand up for what I had been through.
Wow.
And I knew that wasn't going to go over well.
Yeah.
I didn't know how badly it was going to go over,
Oh,
but I did letters and emails, and that's what I wrote about in my first individual book, Beauty Rising from Brokenness, is that journey, and that journey through confronting my family and then having to go through that process of healing.
yeah.
And unfortunately, that process of healing included my family deciding that they didn't want to have anything else to do with me.
Oh,
And they have not, my mother's side of the family, through my first cousins, haven't talked to me in almost 20 years, or my
oh,
children, or my any of us.
oh no.
Just like we disappeared because I wouldn't shut up. I would not say the things. I wouldn't leave those skeletons in the closet where they belonged. But God clearly showed me in a dream a path, and the path split, and I didn't know which way to go. And God said, if you go this direction, you're still my child, and I still love you, and I'll still use you. But I can't keep building up what they're tearing down. If you go this direction, I'm going to build you up to be all that I've called you to be.
Wow. Wow.
And when I had the dream, I didn't really understand it. And I prayed for discernment. And that's the discernment that God gave me of what the dream meant. And He didn't, tell me, well, you just don't have to have anything to do with your family anymore. It was just, you have to stand up and have some boundaries. When I stood up and had some boundaries and said, this is just not going to be this way anymore. I'm going to speak the truth, and you can walk with me in truth. And they couldn't do it. And
Oh,
it's not their fault. They have issues of their own, and hurting people hurt people, and that's all
yes.
part of the process that you go
Right.
through. And I
Right.
talked about that in my book about healing mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and walking through that healing, and through counseling, and through confronting my family and all of that.
Right. Right.
And so that was a really long, hard process. It was about,
Very.
I had to say, it's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Oh, being a counselor for 30 years, if that isn't dealt with, it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a sliver. All it does is fester and
Yeah,
poison the whole body. And it's
yeah,
painful to dig that sucker out. I used to hate that when my mom would dig it out. It was not good. And it's like, don't, just put a Band-Aid on it. But that doesn't fix the problem, does it?
it does not. It does not. And I, fortunately, when I went to my doctor, because the way I described myself during that process was as a volcano. One minute I was sitting in my room, dormant, rocking in a rocking chair, staring at the wall, and the next minute I was spewing hot lava on everybody in my path.
Oh,
And
goodness.
unfortunately, that was my husband and my children,
Oh,
because they were what were in my path. And I was just so angry. And I remember times I would just walk and walk, and I'd just be, God, I don't understand. Why did you put me in that family? And why did you let them do this to me? And I don't understand. And I was really mad at God.
yeah.
And, And people I say that, and sometimes if I say that on a stage when I'm speaking, people go, and I'm like, it's okay. He's a big God. He can take it.
Yeah, right. You can.
Me anyway. He loved me through it.
Exactly, exactly.
Take it. And so when I finally realized the point I came to that made me realize I needed to get help was my husband came home for lunch, which he rarely did, and I had been on a tangent all morning, spewing lava all over everybody. And when he got ready to go back from lunch, my two daughters, who were probably about 12 and 10, put their arms around his waist and said, Daddy, can we go back to work with you? We don't want to stay here with her.
Oh,
And
oh,
that was a knife in my heart. It just
wow.
because I never wanted to be anything more than a mother and a grandmother. I used to tell my kids I just want to be a grandma when I grow up.
Yeah.
So, you know, that just killed me. And I thought that I won't have that. I won't have that. And I
Wow.
went to my doctor and I said, I need help. I just need help. And so she gave me a list of counselors that my insurance would cover, and I went down the list one by one and called every one of them and interviewed them. And
Oh,
I had
wow.
a set of questions.
Good for you.
Are you a Christian? Are you born again? What do you think about body and mind and spirit and physical all being, working together? And I got to about the fifth or sixth one, and I hit on the right one for me. And
Good for you.
that's something I tell people about doctors and counselors or anybody you go to like that. You have to find the one that's the right fit for you.
Right.
Not everybody is going to see things the way you see things, understand things the way you do. And you
Exactly.
have to. And you're more than welcome to fire somebody and find another one.
Right.
Just because they have all
Exactly.
those degrees does not mean they are not above being fired.
Right. You're totally right. You're very right. I just did a video actually myself for people. I'm like, if you found me, there's a purpose for that. And this is who I am. If I'm gonna be a good fit for you, come on, let's talk. But you're right, you're right. And I've done the same thing. And if somebody wasn't a good fit, it's just like, I'm sorry, this just isn't working. Same thing
Right.
happens with a job.
Exactly.
So
And the
tell
same
me,
thing with coaching. With coaching, there are some people that I can work with, and there's some people who are just not a good fit. And
right.
I try to refer them to somebody else, or if I don't have anybody else, I tell them if I find somebody, I will let them know. But there's sometimes you just have to be in alignment with what you both believe.
Right.
And
Equally yoked.
yes, yes, and that's
Exactly.
not just about marriage.
Yes, exactly. So you're a storyteller. That's what you coach people to be a storyteller. And I know your stories are just amazing. So tell us a little bit more about how did you come to be a storyteller and tell us a story if that's what you're going to do.
I became a storyteller because my grandmother was a storyteller. And it wasn't until just in the last 6 or 8 months that I have realized that is my gifting and that is what I was called to do. And my husband and I actually were expecting our first grandbaby. We have four grown grandchildren that we got half grown with our son in laws, but we are expecting our first baby. And we were going through all the stuff yesterday from when our kids were babies. We have hauled that stuff through 17 moves.
Oh
I
my
could
goodness.
not believe we have moved so many times with the military and we have hauled those boxes every single time. I couldn't believe what was in those boxes. But as we're going through the boxes, we're looking for this one particular dress. And it's the dress that my grandmother bought for my oldest daughter to come home from the hospital in. And it's red and frilly and lacy. And my grandmother was so excited to have a great granddaughter. And so she bought this dress, and my daughter is having a girl. She's due to be induced on Monday. However, she's at home having contractions now, so we could be having
Wow.
baby sooner. I don't know. She's going to come when she's going to come because she has her own little mind already. So she goes to the doctor for her ultrasounds, and she won't turn, she won't move, she won't let them see anything, she won't let them check. They make my daughter walk around, still won't cooperate. They put the Doppler on her to listen to her heartbeat. She kicks the Doppler off of her stomach.
Oh, wow.
She already has a personality and a half, and she's named after me. So what did they expect?
There we go. There's the story. So
Her
now,
name is Jane Elizabeth, and so she so we found this little dress, and in this little dress I found this plaque, and that's what I was getting to. And this was a plaque that I had bought for my grandmother, and it says, "What is a grandmother? She's always going to nurture you with a hug and a kiss," and then it goes on, and then it says, "She's grandmother, Nana, and a million good things. And most of all, on her, um, there's no story told that grandma can't capture you with and make you sit for a while."
oh, great.
And I had bought that for my grandmother, and it was a gift for her, and I had it in all those baby things.
Wow.
And it just was God's way of reaffirming to me, yes, that is what I put you here to tell stories and to teach other people to tell their stories and to give them a platform to tell
Right.
their stories. So if they want to tell their stories in a book, I help them. If they want to just start with a chapter, I do anthologies so that they can just do a chapter. That's how I started because a whole book seemed overwhelming. And so a chapter didn't seem so daunting. And if they want to tell a story in a book, I can help them and coach them through writing that book and getting it published and even getting it to number one bestseller or number one international bestseller.
Oh,
And
amazing.
I also have summits that I do. I host myself that gives them an opportunity to speak if they want to speak. And I have live events that I do. If COVID ever goes away and we get to go back to being with real people again, I
Yes.
do live. So if they want to speak from a live stage, they can practice on a virtual summit and they can move to a live stage. And so I just like to offer people a lot of opportunities. I have a magazine coming out in June. So if they want to start with a magazine article, they can start with that, or they can do all of the above or none of the above. I have packages and then a la carte,
Wow.
whatever they want.
Tons of stuff. Now, before we wrap up our little show for today, you had talked about an accident that you had.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, what that was all about, and your health issues, and because I know it's going to take us some time, and we're going to have a continuation of this story, but give us a little snapshot on some of the things you've been through with the healing process.
Well, when I went through Beauty Rising from Brokenness, what happened after I went through all of that with confronting my family, I developed chronic illness, and I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and I had severe bronchitis and asthma. And a lot of people don't realize that childhood traumas can manifest in chronic illness when you're older if you don't deal with that splinter you were talking about and get that
Right.
thing out of there.
Yep.
So that's what I was dealing with. So when I walked through healing and got back on my feet from that, I was in school, so I was studying for my doctorate in naturopathic medicine. So I have a doctorate in naturopathic medicine, and I can help people take no supplements to take and things to heal. But about 6 months after I walked through that healing and I was better, I decided to take my two younger kids and make a trip home to Louisiana. We were living in Michigan. We were stationed in Michigan at the time. And my husband and my daughter stayed at home. My oldest daughter were both working. And they met us in Kentucky on the way back for a family reunion camping trip with his mom and dad and his siblings and their families. And we had a great time boating and fishing and all kinds of fun stuff. And that is my family. That is the family God gave me. that I just absolutely adore my family. And we were on our way back into Michigan, and we were going into construction. If you know anything about Michigan, you know that there are two seasons, winter and construction. Right now it's winter. When the orange barrels come out, it's construction season. There's no spring and summer, just construction.
Just construction.
Yes, and so we crossed that Ohio line into construction in Michigan, and the traffic was shifting to the shoulder and the far outside lane, and the semi trucks were supposed to be in that far outside lane. Well, the semi truck in front of us never got over, despite 6 miles of signs in Ohio coming up to the border and 6 miles into Michigan. He never obeyed the signs and never got over. We were on that side of the road because we'd had a blowout on our camper earlier that day. We knew the tires were all about the same age. We knew if we needed to get off, we needed to be close to the exit. So we stayed in that lane. My mother-in-law called, and they were about 45 minutes ahead of us, and called and wanted to know if we wanted to go to dinner. And so I hung up the phone with her, and my son in the back seat, who was 11, asked if we were going, where we were going for dinner. And I turned around to answer him, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw my husband stomp on the brakes with both feet. And this little voice in my head said, "You can't stop the camper like that." And before I knew it, it was screeching metal and smoke, and I didn't know where I was. I couldn't comprehend what was going on. My son was screaming
Oh no.
at the top of his lungs. I couldn't figure out how to get to him. I just kept saying, I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm coming. The phone started ringing again, and I couldn't figure out where the phone was to answer the phone.
Wow.
And I did not know what to do.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So your husband there, I mean, was the truck smashed? The truck ran into you at that point?
We ran into him because he stopped.
Oh my gosh.
Stopped like that on a dime. He was empty. He had dropped a load in Ohio and was headed back to Michigan, headed back to Canada. He was out of Canada. And I don't think that he spoke good English, as probably the reason he didn't obey the signs. I think he spoke mostly French because he was from French Canadian.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and so we were into the back of the truck, in our Suburban.
Oh, it was a Suburban, not a camper.
A Suburban, and we had a bumper pull camper that was 32 feet long that weighed about 8,000 pounds fully loaded.
Oh my gosh. So needless to say, the sirens and all of that was coming soon?
Yes.
Yes. So I know.
Not soon enough.
Not soon enough?
Not soon enough.
So what do you mean by that?
We're at 20 minutes.
20 minutes. So Elizabeth, you're going to leave us hanging until
I
our next.
Because I want you to come back and hear the rest of the story.
The rest of the story. Okay, so.
And you'll find, even if you run right now to my website and you get my book and I ship it to you, you still won't know the rest of the story.
Until you get the rest of your.
Until you get the next book, which doesn't come out until May.
But you will tell us the rest of the story on Thursday, right?
Yes, I definitely will.
Okay, so my listeners are going to have to listen to the next video that I will publish right here on this website on Thursday of this week. And that will be awesome to hear the rest of the story, because now I don't even, to be honest, folks, I just met Elizabeth. I don't know the rest of the story. So
and she told me this is what she wanted me to do. And then she's like, well, what happened?
But I don't want to wait. Now I want to listen. So this is the kind of storytelling, that you do, that you go and you tell people. You don't leave every audience hanging like this.
No, I don't leave every audience hanging like that. And have teaching points in the story when I have longer to talk to an audience so that I can walk a little bit through more what that healing looked like. And I
Yeah,
do tell it in two separate stories, the childhood part and the part that I called relentless, which is the accident
the
and get
accident.
the healing from that. So I talk about that in two separate stories. So sometimes they have me back. Usually,
So, so
most
next, so our next talk is going to be the rest of this accident story, what happened, and undoubtedly more healing from that the whole family has gone through with the post-traumatic stress and all of that. But in the meantime, if you want to get to know Elizabeth a little bit more, you can go to her website, which is just your name, right? Clamon.com,
that's
correct?
right. It's Clamon.
Or if you want to reach her, you can go to Elizabeth at elizabethclamon.com.
Clamon.com.
And the same with me. If you're interested in hooking up with me, my website's lindalarsonschlitz.com or linda@lindalarsenschlitz.com. And I too have a book, Speak to Me, God. I'm Listening, which is 365 daily meditations for those who want to hear God answer life's toughest questions, which are some of the things you asked. And
Oh,
from
yeah.
my own background of dealing with trauma, dealing with alcohol and drug abuse, dealing with mental illness, that's what led me to my relationship with discovering God has a purpose for us all. We are all faucets of hope. And what's so cool about this is that we don't have to know somebody intimately or for a long time to have a common bond.
Yes.
That's what's so cool. I mean, I feel like I've known you forever, but if I had, I would know the rest of that tragic story. But
Thursday. It'll be okay.
Thursday.
Unless my daughter has the baby, and then y'all may have to wait a little longer.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Well, we'll see. Maybe I'll have to record you and just post it, but they better be watching. So
It'd be better because if we pray for my daughter to not have that baby, then she's gonna come after all of it.
well, that'll be great. Well, we may have to pre-record it and just post it just to be sure. But thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining me today. And we'll be looking forward to hearing more stories from you, especially the end of this one. And good luck with your coaching. If people need a coach to help them along in their speaking or their writing or their life or their recovery, Elizabeth is a great tool for that. And again, I'm really grateful to have you be a part of this. So God bless you in your ministry.
Storytelling is an amazing healing tool.
It really is. And that's really what my whole life is. My life is my story. And even though counselors aren't supposed to self-disclose because it's unethical, I said to someone, well, you shouldn't be doing that. It's against the ethical standards to be sharing so much with your clients. They said, listen, when it's all said and done, I don't stand before the counselor ethics committee. I stand before God. And
Yes.
I'd rather not have a license and spend eternity with the good and faithful servant approach.
Yes.
I've got to do what God's called me to do, and that's sharing my experience, strength, and hope. So again, thank you so much, Elizabeth. God bless you. Be looking forward to hearing the rest of the story.
Thanks.
Like Paul used to say. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.